Welcome back everyone, and welcome to a bit of a different video today. One where we're going to couple a chat with a bit of a sightseeing tour of some of Sydney's famous, most beautiful places. I'd like to talk about life, some tough times, possible ways around them, but also go and visit that thing. We'll go over that, the Harbour Bridge, visit the Opera House, a few other places along the way, and the plan is to end up in Bondi Beach. So, let's get cracking.
Australia, and Sydney in particular, is now one of the most expensive places in the world to live. The median house price now is a whopping 1.6 million Aussie dollars, and rents have increased to almost $1,000 a week, and there are no signs of this improving. It's forcing our young to leave the cities and are making our inner cities, once vibrant, now ghost towns for grandmas. Retirees are the only people able to afford in these areas because they bought during an era of affordable housing. So what does a washed up mid-50s single man of 4 kids who rents do to keep a roof over their heads? Bit dark, I know, but a conversation with a friend recently got me thinking that there are probably a few of us out there in a similar position, so let's talk about it. Now, rather than film a sad old man floundering in his own melancholy, I want to lighten the load a bit and pair the one-way conversation we're having with something nice. A bike ride around Sydney should do it, and I must admit that when life does get to me and those dark clouds begin to roll in, riding a motorbike really does help. Maybe it's the fear of death that brings our minds back into focus. That at any point a deranged Audi driver, because there's always an Audi, right, will career into me and bring it all to an end. Sometimes I feel it would be a relief, but enough of that. I have kids to look after.
So the plan is to first of all head to Sydney Harbour Bridge, which around these parts anyway is colloquially known as the coat hanger. We'll see why. But there's a huge amount of work going on here, as you can see. They've been working on here for way over, I want to say 2 years now. But it is a complex situation they're doing. They're changing all of the roadway as you enter the bridge. Hopefully one of these days it's going to be through.
Built in 1932 at a cost of over $4 million, which is almost 70 million in today's money, it has more rivets keeping it all together than there are people in Sydney. And it's the largest steel arch bridge in the world. The same people who designed and built the Tyne Bridge in Newcastle in the UK were enlisted to build the Sydney Harbour Bridge. But unfortunately, 16 people died during construction. And Sydney's famous fireworks was first used on the bridge as its centrepiece in 1996. It's 134 metres tall at the centre. The pylons on either side are only for decoration, and you can climb up them, and there's a great view from the top. And you might be wondering about painting. It's a continuous process. In other words, it doesn't stop.
The coat hanger. Actually, people who live south of the coat hanger, you know, the guys who generally are living in the areas we're heading to, so the eastern suburbs and Bondi and Bronte and these sort of places and the like, they rarely venture north of the bridge. They see it as though they're entering no man's land when they come the other way. And it's sort of a different world to them.
Which is a decent segue into what happens to us when we reach our 50s. Some of us are made redundant, and what we hoped would be a gentle flight path to retirement becomes a less comfortable and financially taxing roller coaster that may never end. Well, obviously it does. It's final. Very final.
Sydney's new tallest building is that building there on the right hand side, which is the Crown Casino, although I think they've lost their licence. I don't know, there's lots of issues there, but it's still a hotel. As we go around this corner, you'll see a wonderful Sydney Opera House.
Sydney Opera House sits on Bennelong Point, which is named after Woollawari Bennelong, senior Wongal man of the Eora Nation. At the time when the British first arrived in 1788, they were dubbed the People from the Clouds. Bennelong became a mediator between the Brits and the Eora Nation after being kidnapped by the Brits in 1789. He was granted the site the Opera House now sits on as his home by Arthur Phillip in 1790, though he died in what is now called Putney, which was then Kissing Point in 1813, but he did spend the last few years of his life in the orchard of Sydney's first brewery, James Squire's, which is in Ryde, which is just a bit north of the bridge. Designed by Danish man Jorn Utzon, he never came to see the finished article due to some argument at the time with the Aussie government. It was opened in 1973 and it took 14 years to build at a cost of $102 million. The original estimate was only $7 million, so construction hasn't changed, has it? It's cooled and heated by taking seawater from the harbour and run through over 30 kilometres of pipework. It's now listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
There we are with the Manly ferries and the ferries in front of it. Now you see these newer buildings on the south of it. The first one, which is the one on the furthest left there, looking there, it's called the Toaster. Well, we've coined it the Toaster. It's full of rich and entitled people, one of whom I believe is was a talkback radio host who complained of the noise from the bar underneath the Sydney Opera House. Now that bar had been there many, many years before the toaster was built. And it just shows you the attitude of some of these people. I believe that same person is now in rather hot water. I think something to do with indecent assault. But then he's used to putting things in little holes in toilet walls, isn't he? That's State Library of New South Wales. There on the left. A pretty good library, actually. From toilet walls, as we go around this corner, oh, look at that old bus there as well. From toilet walls you see there, just behind the trees, the seat of the Catholic Archbishop of Australia. Obviously, I'm not suggesting anything, but it is a beautiful building. Apparently the longest church in Australia as well in terms of its length.
The first St Mary's was built slowly between 1821 and 1835, but it got burned down in 1865. The new cathedral, which you see here, was also built slowly and in sections and wasn't finished until 1928. And the towers were only added in 2000. It's the largest ecclesiastical building in the English Gothic style in the world. And unlike many other cathedrals, apparently, it's oriented north-south, not east-west. I don't know why that's important.
So what do we do when that letter of redundancy, termination comes through? Certainly when you're in your mid-50s. Well, hopefully, some have paid off their house, the kids are no longer dependent, they've saved a little bit of cash, so they can maybe take on a cushy bus driver job or parking ranger, God forbid. But unfortunately, some of us still have rent to pay. We don't own a house, have never had the opportunity to be able to afford the deposit for one. Still got kids at home and at school, debts to pay. So what do we do? Well, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I figured I should start my own business again and link it to my YouTube channel. Do something I love instead, is what I espouse, right?
Which in my case is to work with cars. But in the current economic climate, it's not exactly paying the bills. With all the kids to house and feed, and we're stuck in one of the most expensive areas of Sydney due to school commitments, putting up with rent that increases yearly and takes up almost 60% of my income makes financial life incredibly hard. Especially when you know there's a tax bill coming, there's not a lot left to put to one side. And I know I'm not the only one.
Yes, I know, it's a first world problem. By virtue of birth, I don't have to put up with war-torn countries or despotic bloody dictators bombing marketplaces and hospitals and all this stuff. But it is the only place I've got. And talking of places, this is the Royal Botanic Garden. As we pass the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which I believe is still free, which is excellent. It's a really good gallery. If you come here, go there, definitely. It's a good day out. But you'll see here, all around me, is the Royal Botanic Garden. And it is a brilliant place to hang out, go for a run as these guys are over there. I used to go for a lunchtime run around here. Or just sit and watch the comings and goings of the harbour.
The Royal Botanic Gardens are the oldest botanic garden in Australia, first established in 1816, and they're the second oldest in the Southern Hemisphere. It is the oldest scientific institution in the country and has over 4,000 different plants across its 74 acres.
I've always found a way before, but at my age is beginning to drain. Certainly from a point of view of deciding and more importantly acting on a way out or a way forward. I totally get why some decide to check out entirely. In my case, my kids would receive my pension, my superannuation, or what's left of it after all this Trumpism is finished with it. But it would give them a reasonable start to their adult lives at least. That provides me with some sort of comfort. But obviously, that's not the right solution either.
appears to be a Rolls Royce up ahead. Somebody puffing a cigar as well, as you would in a Rolls Royce. Or maybe it was a vape, because the smoke seems to have gone and I can't smell the cigar. Now on this route we are following the actual run of the City to Surf, which starts along the street just back there behind me and ends at Bondi Beach, where we're heading. So I'm going to try and follow most of that course. So that if any of you want to come to Sydney and you fancy doing that run, it's in August. Yeah, it's in our winter, but every single year, and I mean every single year, I've been here for 28 years this year, it's always a hot weekend, even though it's midwinter. And we are just about to go under the underpass of King's Cross, which is right ahead of us, always known because of that huge Coca-Cola sign up ahead of us. It's not as dodgy as it used to be, King's Cross. They've closed down a lot of the seedy, girly bars. They weren't very nice. And the gangs aren't maybe as prevalent, but I still think they own a lot of the places, so they're pretty dodgy. I don't know what's happening with these guys in front of me here. The learner wants to come in, but doesn't seem to want to do it very well. There was a glide on through Double Bay. This is another extremely expensive area. Not much to say about it other than decent pub here. I like this pub. The Golden Sheaf. It's got a really nice beer garden at the back, which is, you know, not one of Australia's best things because they don't have great beer gardens. They have sort of concrete messes without anything else, but that one's actually a really nice garden. We're heading to the next cove along on the harbour foreshore, which is what we call now Rose Bay.
Now, Rose Bay was originally called Bannerong in the Darug language. It was named after George Rose, a British Treasury official, by Captain John Hunter in 1788. Rose Bay first served as a seaplane terminal from 1938 to 1974, and because of this it was Australia's first international airport. It was heavily used during World War II, and in 1945 9 Catalina seaplanes landed carrying prisoners of war back from the Japanese camps.
Here we're coming into Rose Bay now. You can get a ferry from this spot over to the city as a city commute. It's a great way to go to work. And this, you won't really see the steepness. Well, it's a bit steep, but it's just so long. This is Heartbreak Hill that just doesn't seem to ever want to end. Now, this, people, is another world, really. Unless you come from an awful lot of money. I'm not sure if that is... No, I don't think so. Then this is totally another world around here. You're talking tens of millions of dollars for a property around here. Not just 10, probably 20, 30, 40. Just obscene. Nice Ferrari. It's the second California I think I've seen today. Wasn't the red one a California as well? So I'm pretty sure all of these people would have paid off their mortgage. Maybe Mummy and Daddy paid off their mortgage. And some of these would have been bought back in the 70s for a mere, I don't know, $20,000. And there's now 15 million. Wentworths House, there we go. That's where we're heading. We want to go in there. We'll let this car go. Now, unlike those guys who returned from the war, I'm weak. Certainly I'm told I'm weak. My willpower is weak. I mean, I still smoke, for God's sake. Although, if anybody did catch my last video, I am still on the Champix. Can't say it's really working for me yet, but I will persevere. I'm told I'm a weak father. I know I'm not a very good disciplinarian, but is it wrong for me to want my kids to have as much fun as possible before they reach adulthood? I want them to find and follow their passions so that ideally they'll find a job that they love and they don't end up stuck in a dead-end job that they don't really enjoy, like their dad. I've always had a good, strong work ethic. Probably stems from having to pay my own way since the age of 17. But after almost 40 years of it, I become tired. I see many around me who made better decisions than I. I look forward to the last few decades of their lives in relative comfort. And I admit I'm envious. But what do they say about envy? What's the term? The envious man grows lean at the success of his neighbour. But I can imagine that most people back in the early 19th century were a little envious of the people who used to live here, the Wentworths. This is Wentworths House, funnily enough, in Wentworths.
Wentworths House was built in 1803 and is the oldest house museum in Australia. It was originally built as a single-storey building by convicts and was redeveloped by Charles Wentworth, who led the drafting of the New South Wales first self-governing constitution, establishing the Parliament of New South Wales. His family lived here a couple of times, from 1827 to 1853, and they moved back again in 1861 until 1862.
Now, Wentworth was a busy man. He had 10 kids, and I thought I had it bad. I love being busy. Busy doesn't pay the bills. COVID, for all of us, I think, changed our lives dramatically. For me, I found myself cooking all day, dropping off and picking up kids, cleaning house so we don't live in squalor, and trying to work. There were long days, and it's almost impossible for it to change. But the whole COVID thing, it's difficult. Businesses now are expecting their employees to come back to an office. Organisations as big as Amazon have forced their employees to return to the office 5 days a week. I've no interest in any sob story. But for me, it would be almost impossible to do that, even if I wanted to. And to be honest, 9 to 5, I wouldn't mind getting back to that.
I help others as much as I can and often reduce my fees because it helps them. But in this world, helping others doesn't pay the rent. Just ask the nurses, the firefighters and essential workers the world over. And why is it we live in a world that the most important roles are the least paid? Don't particularly care for the corporate world anymore. All those fake forecast calls and meaningless pipelines that are based on whether we can manipulate others into making a decision that benefits us, not them. And even when we delivered a product that backed up our promises, those same products are swallowed up by bigger corporations that turn them into more expensive, less relevant ghosts of the way they were. So how often do we sell things that people ultimately never use? And why don't we care about that? Is it because we're beholden to those who grow richer and will never experience true financial hardship? Grant you, some of them did maybe when they were younger, but it seems as though that has been forgotten.
You'll see lots of election posters up. We have an election, I believe. I think it's next weekend, or was the weekend after. So, will any of the politicians do anything about the housing crisis in Australia? I know I'm moaning, but God, there are some others that it must be impossible. Particularly essential workers. Back in the 90s, things were freer. The Cold War had ended. The nuclear fear had disappeared. We were suddenly all friends again. Anything was possible. Seems that the way of the world at the moment, not anymore. Although, you come to a place like this, and you have to admit, the vibe here is that things are possible. Certainly, if you've got a bit of coin. And now we're heading to probably, is this maybe the most famous site of all in Australia? Or maybe the Opera House. But everybody's heard of Bondi Beach, right? And it's a nice beach. It's not the best beach, that's for sure.
The name Bondi is derived from a Dharawal word meaning loud thud noise, referring to the sound of waves breaking on rocks. The beach was opened to the public in 1882 after a local resident, Francis O'Brien, threatened to restrict access. It's also the culmination of what is probably the world's largest fun run, the 14-kilometre long city to surf that attracts 90,000, maybe more, runners every year. The Bondi Surf Bathers Life-Saving Club, formed in 1907, is the oldest surf life-saving club in Australia and is now famous for the TV show Bondi Rescue.
So, I go back to, what does a washed up 50-something-year-old person do to keep a roof over their heads? I know others have got it much worse than me. Bigger debts to pay, more mouths to feed. And even if they're willing, there's little opportunity for them to dig themselves out of it. Even if salaries increase, which they're not, the interest payments are still going up, rent is still increasing. Every trip to the supermarket costs you $50. And all you're getting is a bottle of milk, some bread, maybe some protein that lasts a day, possibly two. We've worked all our lives for seemingly little benefit. AI is now taking over in certain areas of our economy. I'm not sure it's going to make it easier. Probably harder. Will the kids, these kids here on the beach, will they benefit from what we've developed? Or have we just made a new subclass of human? I want my kids to feel enthused about what lays before them, like I did in the 90s. So I ask all of you, how the hell do we get back to that? Because ultimately they're the future. And at the moment, the future's looking bleak. Now, I'm not looking for sympathy, obviously. Look at me, I'm sitting on Bondi Beach. But I am hoping that any of you watching will have some ideas, better ideas than me. Maybe we can share them. We can improve our lot. So if you've got this far in the video, thanks so much for indulging me. I know it's been a bit of a whinge, but I think these are important matters for us all to discuss, or at least to consider. Now please comment below. Do you agree with my opinion? If not, let us know. Your opinion is just as valid as mine. And if you like this little jaunt around Sydney, let me know if you'd like to see more of it. If so, subscribing would really help. Thanks for watching.